Hey everyone, Biz Talk with Sean here. So I'm going to talk about the second stimulus because it already passed through the House, and if we're being honest, it's not going to pass through the Senate, and it's certainly not going to survive a president's veto. It's not. So let's look at the stimulus from the last run and then look at the new proposed one because there are a lot of flaws. So the last one, everybody got $1,200. That's awesome. The really, really wealthy people, they know how to work their taxes. They've got accountants that know how to work their taxes. They've got bookkeepers that know how to work their taxes. And they pay them so that these people can handle stuff. And so they're going to be saving themselves about 1.6 to 1.7 million if they are a mid to large size business or bigger. So basically they cashed out hand over fist. Now what happened with the small business loans is the way that the bill was written, it didn't specify what was a small business, which is why you saw huge companies getting a ton of those loans. Now, why is this significant? The mom and pops, there are a lot of them that didn't see a dime, don't have access to a dime of any of those super crazy low interest loans. We're talking insane pricing. And these small mom and pops, they don't have an accountant or they don't have a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, that has a direct line to their banking partners. Meaning they pick up a phone or they shoot out a text or an email and say, hey, we want this. And they've already got everything structured because that is their profession, serving these people that pay them. And so they've got a direct line and direct access to saying, hey, push us through. And they did. And that's why a couple of the more honorable companies that are very big gave back their money. A couple of them, not a lot. Pretty much the last stimulus really benefited the wealthy. It did not benefit the common man, not by any shape, factor, form, nothing. It really, truly did not. And that's how it was designed. That's why it made it through both the Congress and the Senate. There's a lot of talk against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There's a lot of talk, like, oh my gosh, Green New Deal. Ugh! Okay, that was an objective. It wasn't, hey, we're going to do this now. And that's how people spun it. Because the people in power paid the people who told you rhetoric. Now, rhetoric basically means, okay, this is how I believe, and you should too. That's basically rhetoric. It's just a commentator's opinion that sounds semi-professional because they quote a few things. Okay, it's not that important. And these people aren't that important. They just try to be because that's how they make their money. Okay, we've got tow companies that, like there's one in Salem right now that has a 1-star rating on Yelp. Like all across the board, 50 plus reviews, 1-star rating. Because they charge $1,000 if they tow your car. Like the second it hits their lot, $1,000 to get your car out. And they also repossess those cars. What they do is they tow your car. You can't afford the $1,000. You're scrambling. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my car. And they're just like, ha ha ha. And they rack up these storage fees. So now that $1,000 turned into $3,000 to $4,000. And they have a lawyer that will sue you. And basically, you're going to owe them more than the $1,000 to get your car out, and then they're going to turn around and sell your car at an auction because they had the right to possess it. Okay, there are crooked people like that out there. I personally know a few. It's why I'm not a consultant anymore. I don't like working for crooked people like that. There is basically the wealthy profited, and the fact that this new bill proposed does not allow the wealthy to profit, that's part of the problem why it's never going to get passed. The second part of the problem is that it's like the Democratic presidential debates. If you watched it, then basically you saw 9 people or 8 people arguing over who is more left, like who leans more left, who includes more people. And that's not the way that they should have been arguing. I don't know who their political advisors are, but they were not doing a good job. Not at all. And then the handling of those debates, I mean, it was just botched. It was the worst example of political debate that I've ever seen or read about. I mean, it was horrible. And so they're doing the same thing with this second stimulus. What do I mean by that? It's, okay, we want to include all of these groups, plus the undocumented workers, and plus the non-Americans and so on. Okay, if you are not a registered American, if you are not a citizen, you cannot get SSI. You cannot get certain benefits like SNAP. And there's a good reason for that. Okay, you have to go through the process, or you have to be born here. That's just how every country in the world runs. Now, there are a few more prosperous countries, meaning per capita more prosperous. So they may have a much, much, much smaller populace, but that smaller populace is much more fruitful economically. And so they can take on refugees and so on and so forth and give them citizenship and give them benefits. They can. We can't because we're inefficient. So long story short, second stimulus, it's not going to happen the way it's written now. Now, if Democrats wanted to remove, like the Democrat Party that edited that, if they want to remove some of those extra inclusions, it would get passed because then they can hold it over Republican leadership. And the fact that we are so polarized is so bad. We should not be polarized, especially not right now. But the wealthy don't care. They want us to fight amongst each other. I mean, if you look at the actual history of the Crusades, okay, that was wrought of pitting two sides against each other using the same religion. And if you try to tell any religious leader on either side that, like if they are an actual preacher or imam or any of that, they will disagree. Now, if they are a theologian, if they actually studied the stuff and its historical context, they'll be like, yep, that's exactly what happened. And I'm not trying to overwhelm you with a whole bunch of information. I'm just trying to show you, okay, maybe I know a thing or two. Fact check me. Go back and fact check me. And I don't mean like, hey, first 10 pages, all of them disagree. Yeah, it's going to happen because they want you to disagree. Long story short, if you polarize people against each other, they don't unite, and the proletariat don't overthrow the autocracy, which is what happened in Russia. I love the word proletariat because it's kind of like the modern version of peons, but not quite that modern. And peons and serfs, they were basically farm workers. They were laborers. And then you had the elites, or whatever the heck they want to call themselves these days. They're really not. I know plenty of them. They are not the smartest people in the world. Not by far. They may have access to the best education, but they're not. So, stimulus. I don't see it going through unless the wealthy, well, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, okay, Green New Deal, all that stuff. Oh, she's evil. She's going to make us, she's going to bankrupt us. Okay, that's not the case. That was never the case. I've read the Green New Deal. It is an agenda. The same way that we have denuclearization agendas, okay? We're not going to get rid of all of our nukes. Get me? No. But we are scaling it down. And that's because we have an agenda to pretty much get rid of this much nukes. And other countries have agreed to that same agenda. And that's basically what the Green New Deal was, okay? So throw that out there. Oh, she's not an evil person. She is one of the first in 30 years that I've seen to call out Congress on the open door policy. So the same way that these bigger companies had an accountant or a CFO with direct access to a bank and had an ease of access to give me money. Same thing with Congress and the Senate. They have what's called the open door policy. Open door doesn't apply to you and me. We can't call them up and say, hey, I want a meeting. You'll never get it. It'll take years before you can even dream of getting it. But if you're a lobbyist, you can get it same day. It's happened. It does happen. In fact, lobbyists meet regularly with politicians. And she called that out because that is corrupt. That is giving big companies an open door access because they are funding campaigns to these politicians to say, hey, I want you to vote this way. I want you to vote that way. Okay, without benefits to businesses, what motivations do politicians actually have to benefit the people? And that's kind of where the issue is. Republicans are saying, okay, Democrats, you didn't even include us in this one. And the Democrats are like, you didn't even try to make one, which is both accurate. Both sides are accurate in that front. They're not communicating with each other, and that's because the people are polarized, which polarizes the news, which carries over to, okay, this is what my base is saying. Well, I should act this way too. And politicians double down. So long story short, if businesses can't win, the big businesses and the big millionaires and the people with money to influence these politicians, if they can't win, there will be no stimulus. That's why the first time, they won. They won hands down. No question about it. It's like the tax breaks from this last year, okay? Major companies didn't have to pay any taxes. It was insane because that's where a lot of our tax revenue comes from. That's how we pay for emergency things like, hey, here's a stimulus. And there was a guy from New York, he's a comedian, but he's also very loud and not safe for work. And he was basically calling out banks. Banks want another bailout. What? Because they got a massive bailout on the taxpayer dime. They did pay it back, for the most part, but they paid it back, they continued certain poor practices. And now they're wanting another bailout when they had 10 years to build up equity into all of that bailout money. Now they're saying, oh my gosh, we're broke, we need help. They don't. They honestly don't. Not if they manage themselves right, not if they manage their finances right. They don't. And so people are expected to save up money on non-livable wages. What do I mean by non-livable? For example, I know a therapist that you have to have a master's degree to be a therapist and you have to be licensed. He was offered $15 an hour by one of the firms out here in Oregon. That is not a joke. And for example, if I were to work at Safeway, okay, because I've applied for well over 700 jobs. Pretty much all of them I am horribly overqualified for. Horribly. I've had a total of 6 interviews. That's how stagnant some economies were before COVID. This was all before COVID. So, like, I live in Oregon. Oregon's economy is one of the most stagnant economies I've ever seen. Meaning if you're not a business owner, then if you're working at, say, Safeway or something like that, you might be able to afford a room. Because rooms are that expensive out here. And wages are that low out here. And that's kind of the problem, is companies and business owners and whatnot, these big companies that just cashed out huge on the last stimulus, they are downsizing their workforce. They're not expanding it. They aren't increasing wages. With the tax breaks where they basically just cashed out and did a lot of stock buybacks, meaning they increased their stock value by buying a whole bunch of stocks back from people like you and me, and then they inflated those stocks again by enacting business again. So it's a game that they play with the economy. Long story short is, because these business owners and these super wealthy people that are paying these politicians to run a campaign, because they aren't benefiting in this next stimulus, at least not as much, then that's why the stimulus is going to fail. That's why Republicans aren't moving whatsoever. Their interests were already served in the last stimulus, in which the American people effectively got bent over and taken for a ride. And these are all facts. Fact check me, please. Fact check me. Okay, Rideshare Commando, go into the comments, post some links, fact check me. See if you can, because you can't. I've read the official documents. I'm not the person that listens to commentators, because commentators are just people with an opinion that aren't experts. I don't listen to that crap. There's no reason to. So long story short is, this second stimulus, it's not going to happen anytime soon, if at all. Because the players that have the influence over these politicians, which Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called out and then was shamed for. Like after she did that in the Green New Deal, completely shamed, completely belittled, threats left and right from these ignorant people, from ignorant, residents or citizens like you and I. So, yeah, it was a smear campaign. It's the same thing they did with Bernie Sanders. Do I agree with everything he does? No. But he's been consistent for 40 years, which is rare for any politician. Just steady, consistent all the way through. And they smeared him for it because he was talking about helping people like you and I. Make no mistake, these wealthy people are not watching this channel on YouTube, and they are not watching CCTV. They don't care, because they don't have to. I know multi-millionaires, okay? I'm pretty sure that person was a billionaire, but I know them personally. I've worked for them. I've solved some of their problems. I know how their businesses and how the games work. And it was a very fun and lucrative life. And my fault came when I tried to start a new venture, but I didn't have the capital I needed to do so, right? So, and that's part of the problems with small business. So there is a solution though. I was reading this one article about how basically a nurse in New York, and this was a few years ago, was getting paid $15 an hour. That is not an okay wage for a nurse. It's not. Because that nurse was being paid the same wage as a burger flipper, okay? Somebody who works in fast food could make $15 an hour, whereas these people are making the exact same amount. Now, $15 an hour in New York, that's still a barely survivable wage. You're working 2 jobs just to afford a room, because New York is expensive. Make no mistake. That is the equivalent of earning $7 an hour, okay? You're going to be working 2 jobs. And that's kind of what's happening with the nurses, is over there, they were making $15 an hour. With New York's economy the way it is, that's the equivalent of $7 an hour, because real estate and rent is not cheap. Not at all. So long story short is, we have these economic disparities. Nurses aren't getting paid more. Engineers are not getting paid more. In fact, we are getting paid steady wages, okay? What was $50,000 10 years ago per year is still $50,000, maybe 52. And that was 10 years ago. But if you look at rent 10 years ago, I remember paying roughly about $600 to $700 for my apartment. That same apartment now goes for about $1,200. Not joking. And it was a beautiful apartment. But landlords, again, greed, they know that they can make money off of it. So as far as the stimulus goes, unless these wealthy people can get wealthier, which is why we had the tax break this last tax season. You and I didn't feel it, but these big businesses, oh yeah, they loved it. Okay, tax breaks and all of that, it didn't trickle down. Trickle-down economics has never, ever, ever, not once ever worked. This last stimulus proves that. They just got better treatment than any of us. You, me, doesn't matter. They got so much better treatment. And what are they doing? They are downsizing their future operations. They are not hiring more employees, they're hiring less employees back. And they're not raising their wages, not at all. Okay, they just got one heck of a deal on the American taxpayer dime. And that's a fact. So until we change our politics, there's not much you can do, but there is a solution. Follow me on this. And I'm actually living this solution right now. It took 3 years in the making to network and to create the team, or to bring the team together and find these individuals to make this work. Okay? So I'm going to use the nurses for an example before I tell you some of what I'm doing. If these nurses all decide to band together and just form a collective and then appoint somebody to be the overseer and then have a board, okay, that's a very easy thing to do. I've literally done it for my group by myself. Like, they had some input, which was needed, but I was the one constructing the whole thing. And it took me all of a day, maybe 2. And this was in my free time while I was playing video games, just kind of writing out this. Well, this was pre-COVID. But I mean, this was me just job hunting, playing video games, and then doing this on the side, okay? It's very doable. And there are templates online to do it. But you basically form your own company. So you get all these people together, and you do the Winco version, which is every employee is also a part owner in the company. Meaning you put in enough time, you get ownership. But in this case, everybody who jumps in right from the get has ownership. So they're going to be making wages. And they're going to have a hierarchy. You're going to have a CEO. You're going to have a CFO and a COO. So Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operating Officer, so on and so forth, okay? You're going to have that. And some people are going to get paid more than others because they might have a little bit more skill. That's going to happen, and you're going to find nurses like that, or nurses willing to put in the time to dig up all the information that they need to be successful as a group. And then all of those nurses together, they form a business plan, which is going to take time. You're going to have to live in these horrible wages, and it takes time. But you have to build the business plan, which is what I am teaching you how to do. That's what my episodes are for. So y'all group together, and then all of you together can get a business loan. If you've got a good business plan, you can show the profitability, you can show your deployment. I mean, you've got to figure it out, and that's going to take time. This isn't an overnight, all right, let's do a business. No, it's not that. I'm 3 years in, and we still haven't officially launched. We will be very, very soon, like in the next 2 months, but we haven't officially launched yet, okay? Opening a business is a long process. Deal with it. I mean, if you want to be wealthy, if you want to have a good, decent living, you got to put some time in. And I don't mean time into, okay, I'm working for the man. The man ain't looking out for you. How many businesses are actually looking out for their employees? How many people are paying their furloughed employees? You know who is? Trevor Noah. I respect the heck out of that man because he's paying the furloughed employees because of COVID their salaries from his own paycheck. Okay, it's not the network paying them, it's him. He's a wonderful person. Ryan Reynolds, he's another wonderful person. I respect the heck out of him. But by getting together and by basically forming your own company, you can replace this other company. It's going to be harsh. They're going to be critical. You're going to have to start small in smaller venues. You're not going to just be able to walk straight into a hospital. You might have to serve, retirement communities or whatnot. There are different ways to structure, but let's say, and I'm just using the nurse example because you can do this with anything. You can replace your employer. You can band together and replace your employer. You can be their competitor. And if you're as ambitious as you think you are, you can overtake your employer. You can find and source the talent, which is exactly what I did. There was a market. I'm not going to tell you the exact market. I mean, if you watch some of my previous videos, you'll get an idea. There's a market that is very emergent, and there is something that's going to be a drastic need. And I've researched about 5 decades worth of data in order to see, okay, am I right? Is this trend actually happening? Yes, it is. There's going to be a need. And so we're starting a company, myself and 4 others are starting a company that is going to grow from practically nothing. And we've all got skin in the game. Some of us are experts in one way or another. I'm operations. So I'm operations and deployment, but I also have a lot of multilateral skills. Long story short, what does that mean? That means I found the right people that have the same heart that I do. And it took me 3 years to find them, to organize them, to incentivize everybody, and to find a way to make everybody win. Some people just want to be employees. That's fine. Some people want to be owners. That's fine too. Find a way to make it work, and then replace your employer. That's what I teach in these shows. That's what I'm teaching you, because this second stimulus is not going to come through. It's not. There's no incentive for the big people that pay these politicians to do what they want. There's no incentive. And then you've got 2 sides that are just so grossly polarized, and we've got very poor leadership at the top. There's nobody that can disagree with that at this point, at least nobody logical, because we're behind every other country when it comes to our response for COVID. We are number 35. Like America, number 1. No, we are number 35. Economically, testing, and infection rate. Number 35. And that was approximately a week ago. I don't have faith in our senior leadership. Now that might change in November, which is why you have to go out and vote. I don't see too much of a change. I mean, whether it's red or whether it's blue, okay, I think red is a little bit more fiscally ruinous just because of the past 20 years, okay? That's been a consistent trend. I mean, red, blue, doesn't really matter, okay? We're all Americans. And what I'm doing with this show is I'm teaching people how to start their own business, how to do their own business plan. I'm in the middle of editing some videos that I didn't have access to because they were on a Mac drive. And I run a PC, and for some reason, every program, my IT mind, it wouldn't let me access that drive. So I had to find somebody with a Mac to let me access that drive. And now I'm editing those videos, and I'll be teaching you a little bit more, but watch my previous videos. You'll see Biz Talk on them, okay? I'll put it up here, Biz Talk, okay? And then I'm gonna put it up here, Rideshare Commando. Okay, go to Rideshare Commando on YouTube if you wanna rewatch this video or if you wanna see my other videos. Because CCTV, they show the videos between 7 and 10 times. And I mean, that's fantastic. But they don't keep re-showing them unless they're just out of content, which does happen, but not very often. So you might be seeing this on actual cable television, but if you want to rewatch this or if you want to see the other episodes, Rideshare Commando. So go ahead and check those out. Think about starting your own business. It won't be quick. You're going to have to keep your regular job in the meantime, okay? It is a way to restart the economy. The more we circulate money locally, the stronger our local economies are, which will translate into state economies, which will translate into the national economy. But right now, I see us as being in a car with no driver. I honestly do. And it may be a pessimistic view, but it's also a very realistic one. I can back this up with data left and right. Now, do commentators disagree with me? Absolutely. They get paid to disagree with me. They get paid to disagree with logical minds because the people paying them are these wealthy people that benefited. They are paying CFOs and all of the accountants that just basically tore through the last stimulus loan package. Okay, big companies, big people, tearing through it. They are selfish. And I've outlined this in other videos, but the prerogative of a beta, okay, I can tell you one thing for certain. Most of the vast majority of the millionaires I know, personally at least, they are betas all the way through. Now, if you call them that, they will rebel and, no, I'm not. Okay, that's proof that they're a beta, because an alpha wouldn't care, like, oh, whatever. Yeah, don't bring him over here again. Like, an alpha would take a very confident posture, whereas betas don't. And I'm designing an entire test to determine whether somebody's an alpha or a beta. The long story short is, a beta's prerogative is to accumulate and to hoard by any means necessary, by any means that they can get away with, to hoard money and societal status. Both of those translate into the same, but they are different. And some excel at the money side, some excel at the societal status side. Okay, politicians are that version. And people play to their talents, which is exactly what wealthy people have been doing. But they have a disregard for the proletariat, for peons, for basic people. I have heard millionaires use the word peons before. They don't use proletariat, because the proletariat rose up and overthrew. But they use the word peons for people like you and I. And I mean, they were paying me money, so I just rolled with it. Like, yeah, those basic people. It is a unique thing to watch when it comes to millionaires and how they view the world, especially if they're second or third generation, because at that point they've been spoiled and they feel privileged. Because what happens when a beta gets to pseudo-alpha status, they tend to brag about it. They tend to, oh, I'm better than you. Look at what I have. It says nothing about character, I assure you. But the long story short is this: if you don't want those people controlling your life, cutting your wages or keeping them flat while your rent raises, while the cost of produce raises, the cost of meat raises, the cost of a car raises, if you don't want them in charge, you have to start your own business. There's no way around it. And commentators, they're just people with opinions. They are not experts. They really are not. They built societal status. That's their niche. That's what they're good at. And they wanted to stand for a niched field. That's why you have far right, far left, right, left. I am a business owner and entrepreneur. Buy my program. Or, I'm going to show you how to do this. Subscribe, like, and then join the channel. And go to the Patreon. Go to the Patreon. Donate money. I want that money. That's basically what they are. And news commentators, I mean, they're just paid to further an agenda. Whether it's one agenda or the other, it doesn't matter. So if you want to be independent, you got to start your own business. And if you don't have the credit, if you don't have the money, if you don't have the people for it, find the people. Then build the credit or leverage all of your credit and then deploy. Get your money and then start putting it out there. It's going to take time. You got to build a business plan. You got to find the right talent. You got to gauge the talent. Okay, are they trustworthy? Or are they going to try and supplant or overthrow or so on and so forth? Don't worry about overthrowing so much, but worry about people's personal agendas. Because the beta complex is a very real thing. I have seen it. I have measured it. It's a very real thing. And the only reason psychologists don't talk about it prominently is because it will tick betas off, and betas have money. And they pay these guys. And these guys include lawyers who sue. Okay? So there's a reason why psychology isn't focusing on that. It's unpopular. And by being unpopular, I mean it leaves you open. Because if we look at the actual statistics of alphas to betas to omegas, betas don't look that good. They are the vast majority of the population. Vast, vast majority. Okay? And if you tell somebody, you're a beta, they get offended. Because if they are a beta, they are offended. And when they're offended, they're like, no, get rid of them. And they just go freaking people of Walmart. And I don't respect that because I'm an intellect. I like to study. I like to learn. But when it comes to betas, like there's nothing truly wrong with being a beta. There really isn't, because betas were the ones that created society. Like literally, it was betas that did that. It was betas that formed language and then created this societal status. It's why we have the American dream. Betas were the reason for that. Not alphas, betas. Okay, there are advantages to being a beta. It's just when you're a reckless beta, what you'll end up doing is you'll end up cutting off your own nose to spite your face, or to spite your face, because you're paying these employees that are these employees that made you rich less and less, or you're keeping it stagnant while everything else is going up in price. Yeah, I guess the lawnmower is my cue to get the heck off here, but think about starting your own business. Find a group of peers. Work out the business plan. I will show you how to do it. I'm going to keep making videos like this until people start catching on, because I'm personally starting my own business with people that I have vetted and known for a while. We're all on the same mission. We all have the same agenda. We all have the same philosophy. We all come from relative backgrounds. Not the same. You don't want same backgrounds with the industry that I'm going into. And again, you have to watch other videos, Rideshare Commando, to know what industry I'm going into. And that's the reason I'm doing that. It's kind of a psychology trick. If you're really interested in starting your own business, you're going to have to watch my biz talk shows in order to find out what industry am I walking into and how am I walking into it. Because in the future, we are going to need partners. We're going to need more partners and more funding. Now, we can grow it ourselves easy. But if we want to truly dominate the market, we're going to need more capital and we're going to need more people, more bodies. Long story short is this: think about opening a business if you feel financially insecure right now. And find some allies. Find people, because when you have 20 or 30 people with an income, you can get a loan, because they're going to go after all of you. But it also means all of you can pay $100, and if you've got 20 or 30 people, that's $2,000 to $3,000 per month that you can pay to start this business. Banks will go for that. And then look into building your credit, and I'll talk about building credit in the not too distant future. Unsecured credit cards, they suck, but they work. They work very well. Basically, you're paying for the privilege of getting better credit. But yeah, I'm going to end this right now, but you guys stay safe out there. COVID is real. Please, for the love of God, wear a mask. Okay? Please, for the love... The mask isn't to protect you, it's to protect people from you, because you might be a carrier. And a lot of people are carriers. A lot of people don't get sick at all, but they do get the virus. Okay? Please, for the love of God, be careful, wear a mask. And keep 6 feet apart. Why? Because I just spit spittle, okay? And that traveled. I'm guessing it traveled approximately 4.5 feet with just that little, okay? I blew a raspberry. That was enough. So please, wear a mask. It's to protect other people. It's not to protect you. Don't be a jerk. And look into starting your own business. Like and subscribe. Oh, side note. I'm almost done, I promise. So if you have any questions, if you have any curiosities, if you want me to talk about a certain subject, go to YouTube, Rideshare Commando, up there, and please like and subscribe. That makes me feel better, and it keeps you updated to anything that I answer of your questions or your comments or what you want me to talk about. Okay? Put it in the comments on YouTube, and shoot them out. I do read those, and I will answer your questions. Anyway, y'all be safe.